Apple says that the iPhone 13s have the best battery life of any past generation. So, in front of us right now, we have every iPhone Apple sells right now. The 13 Pro Max, the 13 Pro, the normal 13, 13 mini, last year's iPhone 12, the year before's iPhone 11, and finally, the iPhone SE. I've set them all to an equivalent level of brightness, and also made sure that every phone still has 100% battery health, or in other words, lasts as long as it should last. So, let's see if Apple was telling the truth. The phone to beat right now is the Galaxy S21 Ultra, which hit 8 hours and 41 minutes. Okay, we're unplugged, we're on the way, and I've structured this test to start with light social media, move on to heavy gaming, and then into one of the most taxing things you can do on a phone, using the cameras. Now, I think that with these iPhone 13s, it is more important than ever that Apple delivers on its promise of more battery. For 3 reasons. 1. Android flagships now almost consistently come with enormous size batteries. 2. With last year's iPhone 12 Pros, instead of actually improving the battery life from the year before, Apple reduced it from the 11 Pros, which actually meant they fell behind a little bit. And 3, battery life is meant to be one of the main selling points of the iPhone 13s. And so if it just ends up similar to the 12s, that wipes off a big potential reason that someone might have to upgrade. But at the same time, if Apple has nailed it, then they will have corrected one of the main barriers to owning an iPhone. We've not had a single year so far where I've looked at the entire iPhone lineup and thought, yeah, all of these have really good endurance. Anyways, interesting results so far. We've had just under an hour, but there is already a huge gap between these phones. Apparently, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is still on 95%. Not sure I completely buy that, but it's definitely promising. Oh, and thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. The other thing that we need to keep a really close eye on is how the new 13 Pro iPhones perform versus the normal 13 and 13 mini. Because, as you might know, this year, the Pro iPhones have new displays that can refresh up to 120 times per second, as opposed to 60. However, if not done right, refreshing twice as fast can obviously be a huge drain on the battery, and so we could well have a situation where the normal iPhone 13s outlast the Pro iPhone 13s, and that wouldn't be great. In fact, of all features that you need specifically on a Pro phone, I would say that none of them are as important as battery. Because Pro users are going to use their phones more. You just came in, created chaos, and left. I'm not impressed. Pro users are going to use their phones more, and more than likely, they're going to use them for more demanding tasks, like recording 4K footage and video editing. Can we just have a moment to appreciate how poor the battery life is on the iPhone SE? I mean, I guess if you had someone who literally just used their phone for calls, it might be enough, but this kind of battery alone is enough such that I wouldn't recommend this phone to anyone. And I actually had a spare iPhone SE. I was gonna give it to a family member, but then I remembered how poor the battery life was and actually decided it would cause them more problems than it would solve. Check this though, so far, the battery lives are performing in exactly the order of the price of these phones. And it's looking pretty promising actually. As I was hoping, the Pro phones, they are ahead, which means Apple has figured out how to add 120Hz refresh rates with little to no compromise. And the fact that after 3.5 hours, the iPhone 13 Pro Max is on over 70%, I'm actually just realizing now that I may not sleep tonight. This is the problem with battery tests. The better the phones get, the worse my life does. Okay, so iPhone SE is dead. I usually say that if a phone can get to 5 hours in one of these tests, it means the battery life is good enough, that you shouldn't have to worry about it. Less than 4 hours though, is fair reason to worry. Don't get the iPhone SE. And it also looks like the iPhone 11 is following suit. And to be honest, in 2021, I don't think this phone is worth its asking price either. Like, you can tell very easily compared to the iPhone 12 and onwards, the screen is low resolution, it's only an LCD panel instead of an OLED, so colors aren't the best, and the borders are just chunky. The way that Apple tends to work is every time they release a new set of iPhones, they will discontinue some of their previous ones that they think might overlap in terms of demand, and then for the ones they keep, they'll knock like $100 off the price. So, this iPhone 11, for example, released at $699 in 2019. It then got dropped to $599 last year, and now it's sitting at $499. But the thing is, this hardware ages much faster than the $100 cut compensates you for. Or in other words, other phones have just gotten better. Okay, how are we doing? Holy crud. I've just realized something. It's been over 5 hours, and the iPhone 13 Pro Max is still on over 50%. That phone is on track to break every record we have ever had. And while the iPhone 12 is doing, well, pretty good, this is quite cool. The entire iPhone 13 lineup is outperforming it, including the Mini. Battery life is the single main reason that I never even considered using the 12 mini. I mean, I probably still won't use the 13 mini. I like big phones, but it will probably be enough to remove my inhibition from recommending it. So right now on this test, we have reached the camera stage. So to start with, I was taking photos on each phone, then I started recording 1080p video on each phone, and we're just finishing it off now with 4K video on each phone. I don't think the iPhone 12 enjoyed that too much. Oh, I do want to point something out here while I remember though. It's got nothing to do with batteries, but which one of these iPhones looks like it has the slimmest bezels? It's the normal iPhone 13, right? And the reason for that is that the outer rim of Apple's phones, the band of color around the sides, it extends all the way to the edges of your screen on the front. And so if you pick a darker color, all it does is make your screen bezels look thicker, because you've just effectively got two black layers around your display. Also, the lighter colors are much better at not showing fingerprints. So yeah, I strongly recommend going light. Okay, the 13 mini has just conked out. I'm gonna fast forward this test now so we can get to the results quickly. And while we do that, final time I'm mentioning this, I have bought 10 iPhone 13s myself to give away to you. Rules for that are in the description. I am kind of at a loss with this 13 Pro Max. I'm now convinced that this is going to beat the current record of 8 hours 41. It's just more a question of by how much. And bear in mind that on this test, every phone has had Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth on, brightness high, and speakers at 50% volume. And this 13 Pro Max specifically is in a league of its own. 25% left after over 7 intensive hours. What am I even going to do with that much battery? I've literally had to reschedule my plans for the evening because of how long I've just realized I'm going to be sitting here. And do you want to know something really crazy? This is the first test I've ever done where the timer phone has also given me a low battery warning. Anyways, here we are. So, the first phone to finish was the iPhone SE with 3 hours and 38 minutes. I would feel uneasy recommending this phone. The only possible scenario I can think of is potentially like a grandparent or someone who is trying to upgrade from a really old iPhone, like an iPhone 6, and who absolutely needs to have a physical home button. Now, then we have the iPhone 11. It is over 40 minutes ahead, which is a very significant jump, but still falls below that 5-hour mark. Long story short, I think if your budget doesn't stretch to over 500, you should probably stick to Android. You can get a really solid Samsung, Xiaomi, or OnePlus for that price. But then the iPhone 12 is leagues ahead. It beats the iPhone 11 in battery by over 1.5 hours, putting it comfortably in the category of good, solid battery life, and more or less rendering that phone redundant when you factor in all the other improvements too. That said, the fact that this new iPhone 13 mini lasts a whole half an hour longer than the regular size 12 actually makes me want to say that between these two, this phone just makes more sense. They're exactly the same price, and yes, this mini is a compact phone, but apart from screen size, it doesn't have any of the usual trade-offs that come with being smaller, and it's actually the more powerful, longer-lasting phone with better cameras. You can also buy the iPhone 12 mini right now for $100 less, but I really wouldn't. This is where things get really interesting, because the normal iPhone 13 is a lot better than I thought it would be. I've had plenty of top-end flagship phones that are in this bracket of between 7 and 8 hours. And so the fact that Apple's base iPhone can now match that, I think changes the entire narrative. It's not just a case that you won't have to worry about battery life here, it is more that it will actively impress you. And looking through Apple's past lineup, that's not happened very often. But it gets better. The iPhone 13 Pro took that and then added a whole 32 minutes of screen on time to it. That puts this in the top 5 to 10 phones I've ever tested, and it greatly outperforms its dimensions. I'm also just relieved because last year the iPhone 12 actually outlasted the 12 Pro, which really just didn't sit right with me. They sorted it this time. And then, finally, you've seen it yourself, this one is just nuts. Let me just establish something here. The way that I rank phones on these tests is, if you can get over 5 hours, good, solid. If you can get over 6 hours, that is great battery. If you can get over 7, really great battery. It has gone above and beyond. If you can get over 8 though, incredible, the top tier. You will definitely notice how it never seems to run dry. Okay, the iPhone 13 Pro Max lasted just under 10 hours. This is not just the highest score I've ever recorded, it is miles ahead of anything else. And even though, yes, each battery test does run different apps, and you can't make 100% direct comparisons, it is far enough ahead that I can say for sure, this is the king. Okay, at this point I probably don't need to tell you what a VPN is. If you want to either browse the internet anonymously, change the location of your device to another country, to watch TV shows from that country or avoid censorship, or even just to escape data throttling from your internet service provider, then a VPN is the way to go. But then you're faced with the question of, which one? And from what I've seen at least, there is no other VPN that's offering close to what Surfshark is. Unlimited number of users and 24/7 support for this kind of price. If you use the code BOSS, you get an 83% discount as well as 3 months for free, and that takes it to just $2.49 a month. I spend more on paper clips than that. Oh yeah, and it also has the option to remove ads and trackers while browsing. To check out my iPhone 13 Pro Max camera comparison, that's up here. Or for the full unboxing of every iPhone 13, that video is here. My name is Aaron, this is Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'll catch you in the next one.